Hi folks, Brandon here to talk about Rush with you. Rush of the 1980s, that is. That was a big decade for them, mainly because they were able to evolve into being more relevant, but still being themselves musically. They didn't go the way of some of the old prog rock dinosaurs. They were able to keep it going, and it was one of their biggest decades, and some of their best music came from it. I'm going to rank their 80s albums. I'm going to leave Presto out. I know Presto was released in 89, but it was late 89. The tour didn't even happen until early 90, and to me, it's such a departure from the other 80s records. I feel like it's more related to Counterparts and Roll the Bones and such. So it kind of, to me, fits in that category. So I'll put it in with my 90s rankings. So here we go. The number one Rush album from the 1980s, and I would think, just like 2112 in the 70s, most of y'all would probably agree. You guessed it. Moving Pictures. The thing about Moving Pictures is they were able to keep their fans and gain new fans. That is to say, you still hear the brilliant musicianship, yet they were writing and recording songs that were a lot more relative to the times. They were inspired by a lot of the new music of the times. So, just like Permanent Waves, this album represents a new direction for Rush. They were getting away from their prog rock past and embracing a new time in music, but they were still being themselves, and you can hear it with all the agile musicianship. Moving Pictures. And as you see on the album cover, on the back, they're filming the moving pictures. So that's one play on the word, moving picture, as in a motion picture. On the front, they're literally moving works of art in the form of pictures. And if you look closely, you see some people crying. The pictures are moving them emotionally. So that's such a Rush thing to do. I remember I heard songs from this album on 99.7 The Fox, home of John Boy and Billy, out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Just in passing, and I would hear a song and be like, wow, what was that? Then I wouldn't hear it again. But it wasn't until a few years later, my good buddy Kevin Williams, who runs a podcast, by the way, called In Obscuria. I'll give you some details on that. It's a really interesting podcast he conducts. You have to check it out. We were on a church ski trip, and he handed me Moving Pictures on cassette tape. I put it in my Walkman, and I was like, oh yeah, these songs, I've heard them before on the radio. Camera Eye, I had actually heard on 99.7. Of course, Tom Sawyer and Limelight, and I was hooked. I played the tape over and over and over again. And right then and there, they became my favorite band. If you're ever trying to get a friend into Rush, you would want to start with Moving Pictures. Also interesting to note, the song Vital Signs, good thing this is kind of a rough copy. The song Vital Signs, I believe they needed one more song for the album, and they whipped up Vital Signs like within hours. And you would never know because it's such a great song. But some great songs happen that way. They're written very quickly. Just kind of spur of the moment thing. That's Vital Signs. And also good to note, it's got YYZ. I believe that's how you pronounce it. It's a Canadian airport code. It's easy to say YYZ. Most people say YYZ, so if you say YYZ, you probably get a weird look. But that is the correct way to say it. Or maybe YYZ. But I'm not sure about that. Let me know. All right, Moving Pictures. If you hadn't listened to this one in a while, crank Crank it up. Okay, the number 2 Rush record from the 1980s, in my opinion, is Permanent Waves. Now, this was the album that marked their departure from the long-form progressive rock songs to shorter, more concise songs. Matter of fact, I believe Neil was working on lyrics to another long-form piece based on the life of King Arthur, and Geddy and Alex were working on the music for it. But then they just decided, as with all the new music around them, that it was time for a change. And the song Natural Science, which is kind of like a little mini concept song, the music you hear, that was intended to be the music for the King Arthur song that Neil had lyrics for. Instead, they changed the lyrics more and made them more relevant to the time. And you got Natural Science. And of course, some big songs from this record, Spirit of Radio and Free Will. One of my favorite, Jacob's Ladder. The live version of Jacob's Ladder on Exit Stage Left is amazing. 6 songs on this record, right to the point in there. Marks a new era for Rush, the 1980s. This was their first 80s album. If you look closely at the cover, you can find Lee, Lifeson, and Peart on a sign in the background. It's always fun. That's what's so fun about having the vinyl of these. All right, but this is the number 2 Rush record, in my opinion, Permanent Waves. The number 3 best Rush album of the 1980s, in my opinion, is Signals. And yes, that is Geddy Lee's autograph, thanks to a great Blackberry Smoke fan, Phil Smith, and also a firefighter. So thank you for that, Phil. Thank you for what you do. Signals marks even more of a departure. A lot less guitars, dominated by heavy synthesizers. Alex, from what I read, struggled with that a little bit, had a little trouble finding his place, but to me, I think he does some very tasteful guitar parts that work well with the song. These parts lend themselves well to the song. He was definitely a team player and worked to what made the song better and wasn't just about himself. So that was respectable of Alex. I've read also that the period of like early to mid 80s, after Moving Pictures, so 1982, Signals, and into Grace Under Pressure years were considered dark times for Rush. And I'm not quite sure why, maybe personal issues, but their lyrics on Signals and Grace Under Pressure do have darker themes. And again, you have these dark synthesizers and a lot of minor tonalities. But I love it. I love my synths, and this is full of them. Another cool thing about this record is the song The Weapon marks what I consider their first extended jam. Not to be confused with a long-form song. It's just a part towards the end of The Weapon where they just kind of stretch out a little bit, and it gets real spacey, and it's just a really cool moment on the album. Also, there's an electric violin solo on the song Losing It, and that adds a nice touch to the record. Of course, Subdivisions was a classic rock radio song now. Great lyrical theme. It's got a real cool synthesizer lead that shows up throughout the song. And we also have Countdown, which was written about the Columbia Space Shuttle's first launch. The ill-fated Columbia Space Shuttle, unfortunately. Lots of great songs on this record. One of my favorites, but if I have to rank them, I'm going to put it as number 3. my fourth favorite Rush album from the 1980s. Wait, what? Let me try that again. Power Windows. I like to show something to represent each album, but I cannot find my Power Windows tape or CD. Of course, I have it digitally. So I got this book out of my music library. It's a songbook for Rush. Permanent Waves through Power Windows. Every song has the chords. It's pretty cool. So there were some late nights where I just got a nice heavy synthesizer sound and just pounded out the chords to a lot of their 80 songs. Power Windows. Well, Alex hadn't been very happy with Signals and Grace Under Pressure. He felt like the guitar really took a back seat, and he wanted to be happy about it again. So they decided to, both he and Geddy talked, and they decided to take the strongest elements from those two albums, and from Signals and Grace Under Pressure, and focus on what it was that made those the stronger elements, and incorporate that ideology to Power Windows, or in Power Windows. Power Windows, and apparently Alex was much happier. He was happy recording again, just as he had been back in the Moving Pictures days. He felt like it was a nice marriage of the keyboards and the guitar. In this album, you'll hear strings and choirs, and I believe that's a first. You also will hear sampling and electronic drums. So they brought all these things into the fold for this record, and it gives it an even newer sound from what you had been hearing. Rush always staying up to date while still being themselves. One of my favorite songs would be Middletown Dreams. It's not the most well-known song, but what a very powerful, emotional song. And of course, the big hits would be The Big Money and Manhattan Project and Marathon. And those were definitely big live concert pleasers right there. Apparently, the way they wrote this album, and maybe they did it with others as well, and definitely afterwards they did, Geddy and Alex would be in one barn doing the music while Neil would write lyrics. He would send the lyrics over, and they would either try to write music to fit the lyrics, or maybe Geddy would act as an editor and get Neil's lyrics to fit with what they already had. From what I understand, during sound checks for the Grace Under Pressure tour, they recorded a lot of their jams and drew on those for the material for the new songs for Power Windows, as well as wrote new things on the spot, and Alex had a catalog of some things to draw on too. So interesting writing process that wouldn't work for just anybody, but it worked for Rush. So Power Windows, my fourth favorite Rush album of the 80s. Full of all kind of sounds and great songs. My fifth favorite Rush album of the 1980s. Got something really cool to represent the album. Wow, check it out. An authentic Grace Under Pressure tour shirt given to me by awesome Blackberry Smoke fan Lisa, part of the Downer, Minnesota crew. They've supported Blackberry Smoke for years. And thank you for that. I'll always treasure this shirt. This thing's worth some money, but I will never sell it. I'll probably wear it once or twice, but I don't really want to wash it. Gotta preserve this thing. Yeah, Grace Under Pressure. Another dark record, dominated by heavy synthesizers, a lot of minor chords on it. There's even a song, Between the Wheels, where the F chord has a flattened fifth, and it makes a real sound that brings a lot of tension. you don't hear that much in rock music. But I love the darkness of the record. The main radio song was Distant Early Warning. The video referenced Doctor Strangelove, the Kubrick film. Some of the other songs, and some of my favorite songs, but they also are very dark. After Image, it deals with the loss of a friend. Distant Early Warning, which became a live favorite, it kind of evokes images of maybe a futuristic concentration camp. So you see the themes of dark futures ahead, that kind of stuff. It was 1984's Grace Under Pressure. Also notable on the album is another jam, another section where the guys kind of stretch out and they get spacey and take a couple of leads and then build it back up and go back into the song. That happens in After Image, which I just mentioned. So After Image from Grace Under Pressure and The Weapon from Signals both have those extended jam parts, which are pretty cool. Also notable for this album, it was their first album without longtime producer Terry Brown. He had been with them since the beginning, and they just decided, especially since they were in the process of changing so much, it was time to go with the new producer. I think they had problems settling on somebody, but they did finally find someone to take Terry's place. But that was the end of a long relationship between Rush and Terry, and they made many great records, but things change. Another great song, Enemy Within. So many good ones. Red Lenses, what a strange song, but every once in a while, Rush will get kind of quirky, and Red Lenses, I think, is an example of that. And those songs appear throughout their career. They're always fun. Also, this record had an amazing cover. It was created by Hugh Syme, and it's very memorable. In the movie Nightmare on Elm Street, Johnny Depp has the Grace Under Pressure poster hanging in his bedroom. So us Rush nerds like to see that kind of stuff, to see Rush appear in pop culture like that. All right, Grace Under Pressure. Great record, dark record, dominant synthesizers, and I love it. Number 6. And the final one in the rankings. Remember, I'm saving Presto to group in with 90s Rush records. The only one left is Hold Your Fire. I do enjoy this record. I will say the synthesizer and keyboard sounds are much more late 80s sounding. And I prefer, your vintage, warmer, true analog sounds from back in the day, but that's all right. Still a great record. Time Stands Still, with Amy Mann lending her vocals to the chorus. Great song. Force 10, Mission, Turn the Page. Those were all live concert crowd pleasers and very powerful songs. It really is a great record. I'll say Alex was very happy with this. He felt like it was the ultimate marriage between guitar and keyboards. But this also marked the end of an era, because after Hold Your Fire, we had Presto, and Presto marked a whole new departure. They went back to more organic sounds and kind of left the synthesizers back in the 80s. Even though Presto was an 80s album, it was very end of the 80s. But back to Hold Your Fire. This would be my number 6 favorite Rush album of the 80s. Great record, lots of different sounds going on, great songwriting. Also wanted to mention that one of my all-time favorite Rush songs is off of this record. It's called Open Secrets. Kind of an obscure song, but if you haven't heard Open Secrets, check it out. Powerful, emotional song. Great tour. I believe they recorded a Show of Hands live concert on the Hold Your Fire tour. And if you don't have this one, definitely give it a listen. Thanks for watching. That's going to do it for the 80s Rush Records. I enjoyed talking Rush with you, and I'll do part 3 regarding the 90s soon.